I'm Katherine Johnson, 55 years old. I'm a divorced wedding planner who ended my marriage 10 years ago. Before the divorce, my husband and daughter consistently ignored me for 5 years. Once my daughter graduated from college and became independent, I decided to leave my husband. Even though I felt ignored, I stayed to raise my daughter until she finished college. After the divorce, I left the house with my son. It's been 10 years since the divorce, and at that time, my son had just started high school. Reflecting on those days still brings a sharp pain to my heart, but by living each day fully, the pain has gradually faded. Recently, a name I hadn't seen in a decade popped up on my phone. "Hello, you still sound as dreary as ever," a voice filled with disdain responded. It was my ex-husband. After all this time, I wondered why he wanted to talk. I kept my response minimal, saying, "I'm at work right now." "Wow, you're working? Lucky someone actually hired you. My ex-husband always looked down on me." Perhaps it was his need to feel superior. In reality, he never contributed financially, dealing with gambling and debts while I worked to support us. Remembering this makes my blood boil. Though I wanted to hang up immediately, the fact that he reached out after 10 years suggested there might be something important. Suppressing my emotions, I continued the conversation. "What do you want?" I didn't want to raise my voice while working. Remaining calm and concise, he then delved into his own needs. "Mur is getting married. It'll look bad without a mother. Come back just for that." This was so typical of my ex-husband, solely concerned about appearances. Even after a decade, he still prioritized such superficial things, trying to involve his ex-wife. Despite everything, I, now 32, still consider Mur my daughter. I've never stopped caring about her, even during the 7 years of being ignored. However, considering our history, I couldn't simply agree to his request on his terms. I couldn't help but hesitate to meet the owner of this voice I hadn't heard in a while. "Does she agree to this?" he asked, as if it's the most natural thing. What kind of person demands this as if it doesn't matter? What agree to what? Does she agree to have her ignored and divorced ex-wife attend their wedding? Does this man really not understand? His response clarified everything. "Can't you just listen to me? A divorced couple attending their daughter's wedding sounds quite good, doesn't it?" He was still fixated on appearances. To him, a former couple attending an event together was probably nothing out of the ordinary. As I calmly considered this, he dealt another blow. "You must be working as a regular employee by now, right? Well, during our marriage, I supported you financially. It's only fair you contribute to Mur's wedding expenses." What I recalled was working part-time and then as a full-time employee. I have achieved an even higher position now. Back then, it wasn't for a comfortable life. It was the result of me working to earn a living that I couldn't afford. And of course, I have no recollection of having to pay for it. I don't mean to complain now, but I can't even express how much his memories are being altered for his convenience. Discuss the money directly with me. I'm busy too. It all came down to public image and money for him. Even now, these conversations bring back painful memories. Shortly after we got married, I found out about my ex-husband's love for gambling. He earned a salary, but it never made its way home. Debts kept piling up without my knowledge. While I worked hard to support our family and raise our kids, he accused me, "All you care about is money. You don't care about me." He started coming home speaking of perfume, not bothering to hide or make excuses for his affairs. It seemed like cheating was just inevitable for him. It's all in the past now, not a pleasant memory, but I try to move on. Attempting to change the subject, I take a deep breath and ask him over the phone, "What does Murray say?" "What? You're still being ignored by Murray, continually neglected by your own daughter. That's pathetic," he mocks, laughing as if he finds pleasure in this. Talking to this man wouldn't lead to anything productive. "I'll talk to her directly," I assert. "You should. I hope Mur talks to you normally." He replies with a snicker and abruptly ends the call. I let out a deep sigh and turn my phone back on. On the day, I arrive early at the waiting room and sit down alone. Suddenly, the door opens, and I hear footsteps. I'd recognize them even after 10 years. They stop right in front of me. Why are you sitting here? What? There's no place for a mother who abandoned her child. His unnecessarily loud voice echoes in the small room. What do you mean? You heard it from Murray, didn't you? What? There's no seat for a mother who hasn't properly talked to her daughter for 17 years. You're not wanted here. His words spit out with a triumphant laugh are predictable. I can imagine his expression without even looking. He must be picturing a mother rejected by her daughter after hinting at a joint appearance by the divorced couple over a phone call after 10 years. Such a typical move of his. Unaware that I'm thinking this, he continues his verbal attack. But inside, I can't stop laughing. Suppressing my emotions, I respond solemnly. I was just so curious. What? You're curious about your daughter's wedding after being ignored for 7 years and out of touch for 10, he says, laughing. Man, are you some kind of masochist? I paid some money, so let me have a peek. No way, Mary doesn't care about you at all. You're just a wallet. He laughs uncontrollably, holding his stomach amidst his laughter. After a while, there's a soft knock. My ex-husband responds gruffly, and 2 figures slide into the room. Mur and my son Ethan. My ex-husband, looking puzzled, addresses them. Mary, why are you dressed like that? Mary, who should have been dressed as a bride, is wearing a regular dress. Ethan, too, is casually dressed in a jacket and pants. And there I am in my plain pantsuit, looking baffled. My ex-husband asks Mur with a blank expression the same question again. Mur casually replies, What are you talking about? My wedding's already over. What? The wedding's over? Yes. What do you mean it's over? I don't understand. It's over means it's over, just like that, right, Mom? Mur says, smiling at me. Ethan, and I return her smile. My ex-husband looks at us as if he can't believe what he's seeing. Hey, what do you mean it's over? Do you know something about this? He demands, turning to me. It's just as Mur said, I reply. Like I said before, the 3 of us and the other family had the ceremony in Hawaii without you. Mur calmly explains the main points to her father, his voice rising an octave in his flustered state. What, Hawaii? Mom helped us out. You didn't contribute a penny. Why would we want someone like you at the wedding? Of course, we wanted Mom there, Mur added, stunning her father. My ex-husband, desperate, asked, Then what's this today? Why are we all gathered in the wedding venue's waiting room? Mur's eyes flickered as she looked at her father, then coldly said, It's to cut ties with you. My ex-husband trembled slightly as he spoke. What do you mean by cutting ties with me? You ignored her, with me, for 7 years, and then she left us. Clearly not expecting such treatment from his daughter, whom he thought was on his side. He was visibly shocked, but Mur was relentless. What? You didn't just ignore Mom. You ignored me and Ethan too. What? I wasn't ignoring Mom with you. I find it disgusting to be associated with a man who ignored his family, had an affair, and had a child out of wedlock. My ex-husband gasped at Mur's words. He stared at her, his expression blank in the dead silence. Mur continued, The reason I didn't talk to Mom was to keep an eye on you. What? You neglected your family for gambling and debts, had an affair, even had a love child. And you hit Mom behind our backs, didn't you? What? You thought we didn't notice? Any middle schooler would understand that. And when Ethan and I were nice to Mom, you hit her even more, didn't you? My ex-husband glared at me. I didn't do anything. It was you who didn't bother to hide your actions even in front of the kids. He must have believed I turned my children against him, but I never did. I was cautious, as any action on my part could have negatively impacted the children. I refrained from confiding in anyone about his actions to prevent unintended consequences. Looking back, perhaps I should have discreetly sought help. But at that time, I was overwhelmed. I thought enduring it would be sufficient. However, my children didn't accept that. Each, in their own way, wanted to help and became involved. I knew you were abusing Mom since I was in elementary school. What? Since then? You might have thought we were asleep, but your loud yelling woke us up, whether we liked it or not. But as an elementary or middle schooler, there was nothing I could do. So I decided, once I was in high school, I'd save Mom. I ignored Mom to keep an eye on you. I thought if you had an ally, you wouldn't dare hit Mom. So to protect Mom, I decided not to talk to her. She knows that. What she knows? It was a strategy we all came up with. He hadn't expected us to be in cahoots. His face turned pale and twisted. I wonder what my children are thinking. Ignoring that, Mur continued. I pretended to be on Dad's side to keep him in a good mood for safety. In exchange, I made sure Ethan was always with Mom in case you tried to hit her. Ethan, being a boy, could protect her. What? Ethan was just an elementary or middle schooler back then. He couldn't have stopped me. My ex-husband's words made me chuckle. What are you laughing at? Nothing, just contempt, disgust. Thinking about how you're always bluffing. See, you always get worked up so easily. You were always afraid of Ethan, right? Because he could see through you and shut you down with his words, even when he was little. What? I knew you avoided Ethan as much as possible. You were running away from him, even though he was just a kid, because he was smart. My ex-husband blushed in embarrassment and clammed up. That's why I stayed by your side, and Ethan stayed with Mom. That way, you'd never dare lay a hand on her. I never realized that. He was visibly shocked. Murray spoke bluntly to him. Well, of course. What? You became more and more of a stranger, finding your place elsewhere. You were so oblivious. You didn't even see your own family, did you? Remembering that time doesn't hurt me anymore. But Mur's words started to blur my vision. Ethan gently touched my shoulder and continued, Dad, what about what we talked about earlier? The affair and having a child. You're not denying it, huh? Well, even if you denied it, it's the truth, and there's nothing you can do about it now. Why are you bringing this up? My ex-husband could only give a vague response to Ethan's unexpected turn in the conversation. Ethan pressed on. Did you know I was working a part-time job in high school? Part-time job? You didn't know, huh? Mur was working part-time too. What? Dad was never home, never put money into the household, just messing around. We both had to work part-time in high school to help Mom. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. As I said earlier, you never really saw us or Mom, so you didn't notice that Mur was fooling you. My ex-husband fell silent at Ethan's words, and I worked in the kitchen of a restaurant, you know? You used to come there a lot with a woman. What? Sometimes during the day, sometimes at night. You brought a little kid with you too, right? What? That's your love child, isn't it? What? You'd loudly say things like, this kid's going to grow up to be handsome like me and stuff. It was so embarrassing. No, nobody wants to be like you. Ethan snorted. He had no idea his son had seen him cheating and even seen his love child. My ex-husband started sweating and breathing shallowly while glancing at him. I casually asked, how are May and Ken doing? I threw out names he probably didn't expect me to know. And he gasped, how did you? How do you want to know? After we divorced, it might not have been a big deal for you, but I had to go through a lot of paperwork. It's impossible not to notice, especially since you acknowledged them. My ex-husband was silent again. I didn't feel disappointed anymore, but I wondered if he thought he could hide it by keeping quiet. Eventually, when he's gone, all sorts of issues will fall on the children due to inheritance. Regardless of the divorce, the children are still related to him by blood, and so is the child he acknowledged. He probably never thought that far as a parent. Well, I knew it, but it was still a shock. You never thought about me or the kids. My ex-husband remained silent. No matter what was said, was he really unable to say anything after all this, pinned under the gaze of the three of us? My ex-husband didn't even try to make excuses, maybe due to his useless pride. I knew it, but still, what was he thinking during all those years of marriage, of family life with us? He probably thought the onslaught was over. He let out a breath, relaxing his shoulders. but he wasn't let off so easily. And on top of that, you were begging that woman for money too, weren't you? Are you just terrible? Ethan said with disgust. What? What are you talking about? Not what are you talking about? You're even messing with the company's money now. Mur's unexpected words made him freeze as he stared at her. Don't say it's a lie. I didn't do that, really. Still playing dumb? You can't escape this. What are you talking about? Where's the proof? His red-faced shout echoed in the room. Ethan doused his fire with a cool reply. You left evidence everywhere, blatantly in the company's books. His face was drained of color. The financial audit of your company is being handled by my husband, Mur added. My ex-husband lost all expression, probably never imagining the man he thought he'd congratulate today as Mur's husband was the one exposing his embezzlement. I was shocked when I heard it too. Mur's husband, a certified public accountant, was involved in auditing my ex-husband's company. The chief accountant, who happened to know me's husband's firm manager, brought up recent suspicious financial activities leading to his involvement. The more he looked, the stranger it got. Did you really have to embezzle $1 million for your debts and secret child support? Mur's words hit him hard. He must have been overwhelmed with why and how could this happen. Ethan mercilessly delivered the final blow. You know, this is a crime. My ex-husband froze completely. His body trembled slightly as we watched him. Mur said, That's why I wanted to end it. What? I'm married now, connected to another family. I don't need a criminal in my family, and I wanted to reset everything I've been carrying all these years. That's why I asked Mom to prepare this room today. Why can't she arrange this room? This is a wedding venue, right? He turned his gaze towards me. I spoke without meeting his eyes. This place, it's my company. What? Your company? I started in this industry as a part-timer, and after gradually gaining experience, I was promoted. From there, I worked hard to learn and build connections. I entered this industry before we divorced, a little before he started ignoring me. He never knew or cared to know what company I worked for or what I did. He didn't even try to find out. So he never knew I've been in this industry since then. It was a terrible situation, but it led to good connections for me. And 2 years ago, I started this company with someone I've worked with for a long time. Who? Someone you've worked with, the president of the parent company, and now my husband. What? He was speechless. As expected, I guess. So he always thought he was above his ex-wife, who is now a president's wife and a subsidiary company president, shaking. He managed to ask us, me, is what Mur is saying true. What? When we divorced, you cut ties with her, right? That's right, isn't it? He shouted desperately, but cold words rained down on him. Isn't that obvious? Like I said earlier, I ignored Mom on the surface for 7 years just to protect her. It was only superficial. I never really ignored her. Besides, you were hardly ever home. What? You only saw what was on the surface, right? Whether I was ignoring Mom or not, well, that's... And when I graduated from college, you too got divorced. That's when I made my choice, right? To go with Mom. That's a lie, right? It's true. Someone like you, a cheating, abusive, embezzling jerk, just disgusts me. You have no idea how much those 7 years messed with my mental health. Mur's voice, which had been so strong, started to tremble, her eyes filling with tears. Murray, I'm so sorry. I couldn't help but hug her. It's okay. Mom was always there, silently protecting us from any harm, taking on everything, standing strong in place of a deadbeat dad who wouldn't contribute or even come home. Mur hugged me back, her arms trembling, sobs echoing against my back. Ethan gently rubbed our shoulders, saying, Anyway, Dad, you're busted. What? Actually, I'm involved in that audit too. What? I'm a certified public accountant now, working under Mur's husband. You mean you're with her husband's firm? Yep, so I know all about your dirty deeds. I've been looking back, and it's been going on for quite a while, hasn't it? It's more than just $1 million, right? What? Really? Well, what you spend it on isn't my concern. But the fact you used someone else's money doesn't change. My ex-husband fell silent at that. I pulled out my phone and quickly sent a message to my husband. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Several men approached my ex-husband in silence. As he responded, what must he be thinking? He hesitantly put out his handcuffed wrists. I averted my gaze. The soft click of the handcuffs echoed. Since then, my ex-husband has been cooperating with the police investigation. During this, they discovered he had been abusing the child he had with his mistress. Of course, he was rearrested, and the mistress too. The child, still in middle school, is now in a child protective facility. The police informed me. Hearing this, Ethan had an indescribable look on his face. Something wrong. Well, Mom might not like it, but I want to meet that kid. What? I knew Ethan often saw those three at his part-time job. I thought it might be a sentiment. But he said, if I had noticed something back then, maybe that kid wouldn't have been hurt. Ethan seemed to feel responsible for what had happened. Also, yeah, you may not like it, but he's technically my brother, right? Ethan said, looking away. Perhaps since that time 10 years ago, he had felt a vague sense of brotherhood towards the little boy. Indeed, he's all alone now. Yeah, honestly, I didn't feel great about it. That child was the result of betrayal, but he's alive and growing. I've made my kids go through unnecessary hardships. Part of that responsibility is undeniably mine. So let's do what I can now. Shall we go meet him sometime? Ethan's face lit up with a smile. How the boy would react or receive this, I don't know. But I want to see the smiles of the children around me as much as possible. I gently stroked Ethan's head. To move forward, I'll ask someone who knows. I took out my phone, opened my history, tapped the name of someone important, and listened to the dial tone.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident, especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it." Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. "Do you two know each other?" "Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, 'I'm moving to the sales department soon.' If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. "It's still working hours." Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one?" As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.